Hi, everyone. Let's take a minute to get settled in. We can give people like about a minute to join. If you have any questions, not necessarily sales related, that you would like to have us discuss in the Q&A section, please put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. Great. I think we can get started. So, hello, welcome to Hustle Hunters' first ever Ask a Recruiter event. Hustle Hunters is a startup of its own right within the recruiting space. We support early stage startups as they build out their foundational teams. We focus on equity in our process and are constantly learning and working to improve our practices and invest in the DEI resources on behalf of our clients. Follow us on LinkedIn or subscribe to our newsletter to get the most up-to-date job postings and DEI content. We have some really great stuff on there. I am Erica, she, her. I'm a full cycle recruiter at Hustle Hunters and your moderator for today. And we have our panelists, Nicole and Nikki, I will let introduce themselves.
I am Nicole, she, her. I am a full cycle recruiter here at Hustle Hunters. Why Hustle Hunters? Really, it's just the heart behind everything that I've been looking for to kind of blend everything together. The focus of like family and diversity and including everyone and just wanting everyone to have their own like place in the world is really what drew me in. Sales with startups. So this is actually my first startup that I have ever joined. So it's a change for me, but I like it because it's smaller. I was always the person that went to like community college instead of like the big universities, just because I think smaller you can have a bigger impact. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Nikki. I'm the CEO and founder of Hustle Hunters. I'm fairly obsessed with startups and the impact that can happen there. I'm really obsessed with competition, and sales was a natural path for me to follow. And then also with equity. So for me, Hustle Hunters really just merges that for me. And I just love empowering candidates, helping them understand what the startup space can be. Not all startups are created equal. And the ones that we partner with, pretty awesome, really thinking about their people as that biggest asset. And excited to dive into some topics today as a salesperson turned recruiter turned founder. Looks like you're on mute.
Did it again. Well, thank you both so much for introducing yourselves. I want to dive right into our discussion. So these are going to be some questions for both of you to talk over. So first, what does it take to be competitive in the startup space? And what are some qualities of a successful sales associate?
Nicole, do you want to start?
Yeah. So competitive in a startup space, I think while it is easier to kind of stand out if you're in the sense that like generally it's a smaller team, so you don't have to funnel through hundreds of applications and like different people. At the same time, you also really need to be making an impact because they are a smaller team. They want everybody to count, and everybody to really be putting in their all, because if it's only 5 of you or whatever number it is, you all 5 really have to be all about it, because it's startup space is different than a big corporation, so you really got to have that drive. Sales associate, so I actually have been a sales associate in my career, not in a startup space, but I think you have to be passionate about what you're selling, or be passionate about what the person needs. Knowing what someone needs is like the key to selling anything. If you're trying to sell somebody something that they don't need, they're like, I don't care how good of a salesman you are, I don't need it, so I'll pass. So really just finding out who that person is, what they need, and kind of go from there, and then cater to those kind of specifics.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And I can add on to that. Things that I look for in addition to that strong grit and hustle when I'm helping teams hire early sales folks and folks I know who are just going to thrive here is really ownership is the key. So folks that are going to get the tweaks made on that document and collateral and get it out, whether that's themselves jumping into Canva and creating that deck that they need, or collaborating with the internal product design team, versus someone who says like, oh, and then I send that off to marketing. Well, not all not all startups have marketing teams or have the capacity to support the sales team in that way. So being, really proactive of taking ownership of whatever tools there are and really jumping in at that point. And then in terms of ownership, I'm also thinking of like, do you show that you care about the company and that you care about the insights that you're going to get from these customers? Because that's so important early as you're selling whatever product or service you're selling, making sure that that gets to the product team, that gets to your services team, that gets to your leadership, so that, because you're really the finger on the pulse of the market and you're not just like closing a contract and moving on. So showing that you're a little bit more than just your quota.
Awesome. Thank you. And what would you say when a startup is transitioning from founder-driven sales to establishing their own sales team? What are like the main challenges that they're facing?
Yeah, kind of ties into my previous answer that it's like, one is FOMO, right? They have a fear of missing out of those conversations. They've put their heart and soul into this company. They've been doing all the sales oftentimes, whether or not they're good at it. And oftentimes they're really excited to take it off their plate and start doing other pieces, but they're also missing that window they had into their customer is closing, and they're not going to be in every of those conversations anymore. So again, that's like that hiring people that are excited to make like that product market loop happen and make sure that whatever the customers are saying gets translated up. So if you're looking to join an early team as maybe that first person in your interviews, I would look to convey that you're really there saying like, you would trust me because I'm going to make sure that all these things bubble up to you, right? At the end of that call, if that person is like confident that they can step out of those conversations, that's going to be really strong. That being said, it can be challenging to find that person and find that rep. And likely there's no process because the founder is just doing it themselves. And there's lots of easy wins that you can scoop up at the beginning. But one challenge I think founders also face is ego. So if they're not willing to hire someone to say like, hey, you build this, how you've seen work and what you think is going to work for our company, versus, hey, just do this, set them on my calendar and move on, kind of like pulls back the ownership piece. That as long as you can do a great hiring process and find someone or be as a founder, really set aside your ego, then things are going to go really far.
Yeah. And really to add to that is really being able to like let go a little bit, which Nikki mentioned, like it's hard if you're the founder, but as the candidate coming into the interview and being like, listen, I fully like being really invested in the passion behind the founders of the team and being like, this is what I can bring to you, and brag about yourself. This is what I can bring. This is how I'm going to add to the process that you already have. And I think if we bring the passion that you have as the founder, I add to it, and then we put a system in place and we execute it, it could be even bigger. And just making sure that you're ensuring the founders that like, I'm bringing your passion for your company everywhere I go when I'm representing us. It's really gonna, like Nikki mentioned, like kind of let their shoulders down a little bit, not at first, but a little bit over time of like, I know they have my back and I know they're going to represent us and be able to really let us stand out.
Yeah, definitely. And what set of metrics other than closing deals should a sales associate focus on at the pre-seed or the Series A stage, especially considering that they're going to have to do a lot of founder reassuring?
Oh, that's a good question. Pipeline generation, qualified pipeline generation. I would say the speed of moving folks through that funnel, both the length and the speed are good, just to share like kind of where it's been that A, you've been able to quickly move deals through, but B, that you've also not forgotten about deals that took longer. I think those are pretty good metrics to be able to share. One of the biggest ones I would say is also insights that you've gained from clients that you're able to share. Like, I averaged one Slack message a week to our product team with a big insight, or whatever that looks like, or feature insight, or I've helped scope this, or also like pilots you've managed and converted can be another good one. I think you can also look at handoffs to customer success teams as you've had them, showcasing that you've done your due diligence and you've actually like prepared the rest of the team for those handoffs in the past. If you've had a satisfaction rating, or if you've been able to go to your teams and say like, how would you rate me on a scale of 0 to 10 as an account executive supporting the CS function? I think that can be another good one that these founding early teams are going to look for.
Right. And if we could keep the chat relevant to the topic that we're talking about, it doesn't, like I said, not necessarily about sales, can be about working in a startup in general, but just relevant to this, please. And what are some key distinguishing features that someone interviewing for a sales role should focus on highlighting?
I think your pitch is huge. So if, as the candidate, really making sure that you bring about what you've done already and how you can bring all of that into and making it relevant to the startup space that you're wanting to come into, and how you can really execute that and make it like their own from what you had previously done.
Yeah, and the other piece I think of is how you own and have your presence in every interview. You want to approach every single interview like it's a sales call. Show that you can manage the time, right? Show that when there's 5 minutes left, you acknowledge that and say, hey, do you have a hard stop? What's the best way that we continue this conversation? Really showcasing all of your skills, your sales skills in that space, especially as the world has gone more virtual. In that most sales conversations are happening over Zoom. So when you do an interview over Zoom, perfect opportunity to showcase what you have there.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see. In the wake of the workforce reform that's happening through a DEIBJ lens, hiring for culture fit is largely being left behind. What do you think can replace the standard for building a sales team and the culture?
I've seen this play out so many times. I know specifically as a woman who's been in a sales career and left a sales career, it's all too common because it traditionally, especially in startups, has this very bro-y, very like, let's go out and just drink whiskey as men and leave all the women behind. These are real things that happened to me. That is kind of the companies like we work with and like the places that we all want to join. That's a thing of the past. Right. For instance, that Zoom bombing, unfortunately, that happened in the Zoom. Sorry for everyone that's watching. That's not the culture that any of us want to join, is where any of that is tolerated. So sorry for everyone that had to see that. But we're looking for really clean cultures, right? That are going to push that aside, have really strong standards of conduct. And then I find that folks shy away from the term culture fit. We talk about culture add, all these different ways to do it. But I find that really asking the best teams are defining culture and leaning into the gray area and actually like saying, what does culture mean to us? Is it high autonomy? Is it high communication? What does that culture thing look like? And then how can they replace that standard is saying like, these are the three most important things on our team. These things are not going to be tolerated. I think defining the no is pretty important for defining the yes as well. And then at the beginning, just being really hypercritical to make sure that you're hiring a broader like demographic based team and that you're not letting performance get in the way, and that you're very explicit saying, I'm not going to let performance get in the way of culture. And that even if you're hitting your quota, you could be dismissed from this team or reprimanded internally if you breach these cultural norms that we've agreed to and set. I think that can be really hard for leaders to see someone who's producing, but is also challenging internally on the culture. They think, oh, well, we have to keep this person because they're hitting their quota, without realizing that maybe no one else is hitting their quota because of the toxic work environment that one employee is leading to, which overall leads to less revenue and lots of unhappy people who are probably going to leave.
Well, and what is culture fit for you? Typically, when I think of like bigger corporations, we're like, oh, it just wasn't a culture fit. It's just basically a way of saying like, oh, they didn't qualify with the qualifications that we wanted. That's not really a culture fit. And are you looking for a culture fit that is the same as your team already has? Or are you looking to add culture to your team? That's something that you don't have already. So like, what can they bring their values and their add-ons basically that your team doesn't already exist? And that by definition of like the old definition of like culture fit wouldn't be a culture fit. And that's in my mind a good thing, because then you're being inclusive and diverse of like, you're not adding the same people rinse and repeat to your team. You're adding culture to your team. And then like what Nikki said is like, what is culture really? Like, is it making sure that wanting to be in a cubicle. So if someone interviews but they're qualified, but they don't see their life as like being in a cubicle 24/7, is that not a culture fit then, even though they could be a great asset? So I think the question, not this question specifically, but like the culture fit question should be like, well, what does that really mean to each person? Like, what does it mean to each business?
And I can add on to that as well, Nicole, that as an interviewer, it's a great time to ask, saying like, I do my best in this type of culture. Can you give me a little bit of an understanding of what your culture looks like? And a great way to ask that question is with qualifiers, saying, can you give me an example of a time someone messed up or someone didn't hit quota? Can you give me an example of what the last time you collaborated with product, the last time you collaborated with so-and-so, so that you don't just get that fluffy answer. And I just want to encourage everyone that the best way to get into culture, it can be a very slippery slope into toxicity, into I hear so many folks, so many candidates will say like, well, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. We've all had those bosses we don't want. Right? We've all had those toxic we don't want, but reframing that to saying what you do want shows that you've put in the effort and the work. You're not just running away from a bad job. You're actually saying, this is the job I want, and this is why I would be running towards it. Can you confirm that that's all here? So that little rephrase can be a really good way to engage in the culture conversation, learn from them, let them pitch to you what their culture looks like, because you've just told them how you do your best work. And who wants to hire someone that's not going to do their best work?
Well, and also is don't be afraid to ask the question. I sometimes too often when I'm asking the culture, like, what type of environment do you thrive in? What culture do you need to join? Like, what do we need to bring to you, or what do our clients need to bring to you for you to feel good and for you to want to join the team? What excites you? A lot of times they're like, I'm not really sure. Like, think of that question ahead of time. Like, what would you, it's very similar to like, what do you want your home to be? What tone do you want it to be? It's very similar. You spend a lot of time working. So what do you want that environment to look like? It's not just remote or hybrid or in office. It's like the environment around you, the intensity, the energy, all of that is added into it. Like, what do you want that to be? And don't be afraid to ask it, and definitely think of it ahead of time going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess not to go too off book here, but to kind of roll into what you're already talking about, if someone sees an organization and they're not quite sure that they would be a culture fit, how would they be able to drive their productivity in that environment?
Like, they may not fit their definition, maybe, is what you're saying? Like, if they don't fit their definition, how do they like prove themselves?
Yes.
I think, like I mentioned, is like bringing something different. To me, that's what culture is, because if you have all the same rinse and repeat people, that's like a toxic. It's the same person. So really just being like, I may not fit what your definition of your team is currently, but I can guarantee you that I can bring something. Give me the time to show it to you, and you'll, and prove the results of like, yes, I may not be the typical person that you may have hired in the past or that your team consists of, but watch me shine, and I'll add to the team, and then you'll want to add more culture to the team after that.
Yeah. And asking for what does culture fit look like? Kind of flipping that question back, like, what does culture fit look like? What does that look like on your team? And then saying, I'd love to have the opportunity to send you a presentation that just highlights some examples from my career that look like that. Again, show your presentation skills, show that you're able to combat objections, because objection handling is such a key thing in sales. I think just the more you can treat this process like you're that salesperson and you're selling yourself as that job, and the hiring team is your client, the more you can show that, the better. And then I also just want to remind everyone, like, if you don't think the culture is going to help you do your best work, it's a privilege to walk away from a job opportunity, but we're not trying to sneak in the back door here. We're trying to do our best work and bring our whole selves to work. I really encourage you to kind of identify that and but before you walk away, bring that up. So, I'm a little bit concerned about these 3 pieces. And, before I withdrew from the process, I just wanted to address that with you and see if maybe I missed the insights there, or see if I was off base, and let them pitch their culture to you. Let them make those commitments. Talk to other people. Ask to talk to other people in the organization. Once I had someone ask me, how many people on your team hit quota, when I was in interview, just like on the team interviewing. And I was like, oh, not many of us. And because our quotas had been arbitrarily high. And I remember thinking like, oh shit, that's a great question. I'll volunteer that information because it's not very good. But if she hadn't asked, she wouldn't have had that information. So like, don't be afraid to ask direct questions, especially in a metrics space like sales. You either hit quota or you don't, and then ask why. Because we're all trying to make that OTE number, not just the base.
Yeah.
And what could a career transitioner emphasize to make their potential clear? And what could someone coming from an enterprise environment do to make their potential clear in a more agile environment like a startup?
Nicole, I think you should share your path to sales.
I think for me, what has been the most successful, like, key point is, one, you just got to have, like, the grit, and you got to be able to convey that, is like, I'll have the hustle and the grit to bring it. But if you're changing, so say you're salesperson or like you've been a manager, but you want to be a district or you want to be a recruiter, like, tell them why those things can convert into it. Tell them why your recruiter could now be a great tech recruiter. Like, whatever it is, whatever transition it is, bring those skills. Just because you haven't had that title before doesn't mean that you can't bring the things that you've learned and the things that you've done that literally are the same thing, right? As a manager, you're basically doing full cycle recruiting. So I am one that advocate for them, because I'm like, if you've been a full cycle manager, you literally post a job, interview, close it. That is a full cycle recruiter. You may not be the only, that may not be the only thing that you do, but because you have that experience, bring that into that interview and tell them, listen, I know it says manager, but let me tell you all of my duties as a manager. Not only was I doing X, Y, and Z, but I also had to do all the things that a recruiter is doing. So with sales, it's like, you may be a shoe salesman, but now you have to sell cars. Well, the car is like the shoe of your body that you're sitting in. Like, tell them why it, like, converts. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, just, like, practice that. Don't wait until we're probably all guilty of this. I know I am, of, like, waiting. Don't wait until you're in their interview, be like, shit, now I gotta, like, think of how to sell myself. Like, do that with your friends, family, in the mirror, record yourself, whatever, of like, how can I make my pitch better? And then you pitching yourself, especially in sales, if you're pitching yourself in that interview, they're going to see, like, damn, she pitched herself really good. I can only imagine how she'd be able to pitch my item or my product or my company or whatever that is. So don't be afraid of transitions. I think everybody can transition at some point in their life, and maybe should, just to experience other things. And again, bring all of that power that you had in those positions to the new one.
Yeah. And then it would be great if y'all want to throw in the chat, like, what roles you're in now or what roles you're aspiring to, so we can maybe address those specifically. If any of you are making career transitions, or if you're going from one, throw it in the chat. But to echo Nicole, really, all experience is experience, right? Okay. So you've organized the PTA fundraiser for the last 2 years for your kids' school. So you went out and hustled donations from a bunch of people that you'd never met before, or that you casually had met. Well, that's sales, right? So being able to figure out what is that experience, like Nicole said, and connect those dots. Don't assume someone else is going to connect the dots for you. Tell that story on the top of your resume. Tell that story on your LinkedIn profile. Tell that story every time you meet someone. Tell that story so that they know what that is. Don't assume someone read all your stuff at each interview. You want to tell that story in every single round of the interviews, and that, again, polished, like, one sentence thing. Hey, I know that I'm transitioning. I just wanted to share, this is why it's relevant. Do you want me to go deeper? And just kind of give that opportunity of, like, is that sufficient or not? That way you've given them the opportunity to address if this is that or not. One other tip there is Google the language, look on the job description and read the terms they're using. So just Google startup sales language, right? You're going to get, like, ACV, annual contract value, MRR, monthly recurring revenue, all MCL, MQL, like marketing qualified leads, SQL, sales qualified, like all these terms, they're just acronyms, right? They're just terms. And the more you know that, the better that's going to be. And you then want to take your previous piece and overlay it. So in the PTA example, I took all of these, like, qualified leads, meaning the list of all the parents in the class, and I was able to convert 30% into high-level recurring donors. And so at a monthly recurring rate, they were doing this. My average like bring in, so that ACV, my average contract value was $40,000. I mean, I want my kids to go to that school, but whatever that looks like, just make the transition and show that that language is not going to be a learning curve. Because really, you're going to learn all that language in a week anyway. But for whatever reason in our minds, often we see that as a barrier.
And to touch on when Nikki said, like, put it in a paragraph on your resume or put it in LinkedIn, like, not everybody is going to look at every single bullet point that you put under your job description, like shoe salesman. They're not going to, or shoes, salesperson. Like, you're not going to look through each bullet point each time and read every single detailed job description that they've done. Put it in the paragraph, because people are going to look at your name. That's very top. Then they're going to read your description. Make it catchy. Like, I've done this, 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 and this, so that they know ahead of time. They don't just look like, oh, this person's never done this. Like, next, and they're going to reject you. If they read it and see that they're in it, like, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I will talk to this person and kind of see what they've done, even though, like, it may not be their job title, but they've done it before. So write everything down.
Yeah. And then one other piece here is that when reviewing resumes, I think our team, we spend probably 30 seconds reviewing a resume, and you're actually not competing with the people who have done the job before. If you're transitioning, you're actually competing against the spam. You're competing against the flight attendant that applied to the senior engineering position that had a requirement of 10 years of Ruby on Rails experience, right? You're competing against the hundreds of applications that aren't relevant at all to what that job is. So show that you're here for a reason. Make it so that after viewing 25 spam resumes in a row, I see exactly why you're here for that reason, right? So that's where I think it's great to even customize and put the company name in there. If you're a career transitioner, I also recommend writing a cover letter. Tell your story. I don't think you always need to do a cover letter, but if you have a story to tell, don't assume they're going to ask you for your story. Share it. You can just turn that into a PDF, right? You take your resume and then you add the second page as your cover letter, and you just make sure you update that. The amount of cover letters that I see that have other companies' names in there are a lot. Someone will say, I pay really good attention to detail. I can't wait to work for this company. I see that all the time. So just a note that if you're going to do cover letters, it is an extra step of work, but make sure that you do it the right way. And then in terms of telling, we just launched a new product actually on the Hustle Hunters website at hustlehunters.com. And we want to help you tell your resume story right. And actually, we're going to have a post-event evaluation. And for everyone that fills that out, gets entered into a raffle. And we're going to choose one winner to get their resume reviewed. And we'll help you polish that up and make sure that that story is being told really perfectly. So stay tuned to the end, and we'll make sure you get that out. If you're also interested, always go to our website.
Another thing you can add, only if there's like a slot for it, a spot for it, a section, whatever, or on your resume, or just obviously make sure to edit out of your resume if it's in there, but do your research on whatever the company is. I one time got a position against other people that were a little bit more qualified than I am, simply because I added in a little section in where she had people apply. I added like what culture I'm looking for, why like family is important to me. Long story short, the section that I put in there, she was like, reading that honestly is like, yes, you're qualified, but like out of all the people that applied that were qualified, that's why you're here. Because what you wrote about family, and obviously it's not everything is going to be about family in your work environment, but like, because I put that, their family and business, she's like, that's why you're here. Family is huge for us. And the message that you put in there just spoke to me so deeply. And then I got the position because of that. Obviously it wasn't that simple. Like, I did do interviews, but little things like that can make a huge difference. So do your research also. Add a little bit of, flavor to it.
Awesome. Thank you. And what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone that's already in or will be entering this role? Think about what's next. I know so many like sales development reps or business like BDRs, SDRs, and they're so focused on their work, and it's such a big job, right? You're just in this grind, you're calling, you're emailing, you're optimizing, you're in the data. And a lot of them, when given the opportunity, it comes kind of randomly. For me, the SDR that was paired with me as an account executive, he got his first demo experience because I started feeling nauseous and almost threw up during a demo. And I said, Ian said, "You're on." And thankfully he knew this was coming, so he was prepared. But I know many folks who all of a sudden are like, oh, I haven't been practicing my demo and my pitch because I've been doing my other job. So always be thinking of what's next and how you're going to get there. So if you're in a role and you'd like to take on more responsibility or a different
a territory, like tell your manager that's what you're going for and ask, how can I get there? And kind of just start doing that extra. In the startup space, there is always more that can be done, and being really strategic about what are you doing for your current role? What are you doing to help the business? What are you doing to help you get kind of the things you want for your next step of your professional career? If you look at job descriptions and you're like, ooh, I need to do a more technical demo, maybe start doing the more technical part of the demo, right? Work with the solutions engineer and recognize that's a gap of yours. And someday you want to be able to demo a really technical product. And then you work with that solutions engineer so that you can at times do that, right? So they can kind of be in the background, which most solutions engineers I know are really excited to have a little more time back in their day. And it's just like continually building your skills. And most teams and managers are really excited to help you build those skills. So just kind of be looking and thinking.
And don't forget to add to your skills. Like, don't be afraid to do something different. Sales is a huge section of life. I mean, everything is basically sold, but my point is don't be afraid to sell something different, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, if you've been selling a certain thing or line or something in your career, don't be afraid to change it. It may be new to you, but you may actually thrive way better in that product area than you were before. And if not, at least you've done it and you grow from it without even realize it. You will grow from just changing and doing something different.
And I have one more. I know you asked one and I'm giving you like 6, but I just get so excited about these roles. Empathy. The more empathy you have for your customer, the better salesperson you're going to be. I had an awesome CEO, Ranveer, when I was at Shoot, and he always said, a good salesperson just takes like the basic amount of like intelligence, and you can be a good salesperson. To be a great salesperson, you have to have that empathy to really understand what's going on, ask the right questions, be curious enough to really, and actually like if you care about it because you're empathetic, then you're going to ask those questions as well as with your team. That's where you see the opportunities internally because you're empathetic to your teammates. You get the products and the features prioritized because you were empathetic to the product team, and now that you're really excited about that. As well as in the interview process, displaying that empathy can really be seen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, thank both of you so much. And I want to thank everybody that is that has attended for joining. Again, huge thank you to both of our panelists. Please, everybody, connect with us on LinkedIn. Take a look at the careers page on our website. We would be really happy to speak to you again. And Nikki and Nicole, do you have any final thoughts that you want to add?
Just reach out. Don't be afraid to, after this, if it's a day, a week, a month, a year, whenever it is, if you have a question or want help or anything with anything, let any of us know. And I know I said any a lot, but I literally mean any.
You can get to us on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Or through the Hustle Hunters website. So if you go on the For Job Seekers page, scroll to the bottom and you'll see our beautiful faces and be able to check out our LinkedIn profiles, as well as we want to see you. We want to have you come in and get to talk about your story and help update that. So whether you're watching this today live on Zoom or you're watching this as a replay, awesome, welcome. We're thrilled that you stayed with us through this. Go to that site and we'd love to sign you up for a session. And then Erica, do you have the survey link, or we can get it put in the chat as well for anyone who's listening live? If you fill out this survey, you're going to be entered to win that resume or LinkedIn profile review for free, because we all love free stuff.
I am getting this survey link and now. Let's see. Just 1 second. It's here, I promise. All right, there it is.
Awesome. So Ariel, if you can get that in the chat for everyone on Zoom. Really excited if you're able to fill it out. Let us know what kind of content you're looking for in the future, because we love making these and sharing the insights that we're seeing every day as we work with those startups.
And too, if there's another topic that you want us to cover, let us know and we'd be happy to do that too.
Yes, please let us know. All right. Well, everybody, we will see you next month. And thank you again so much for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.